This is Gemara Metziah, Daf Sadik Zayin, and we're holding on the very bottom of Sadik Vav Amid Beis. 3 lines from the wide line, says the Gemara, Ahu Gavra. There was a man, Dishail Lei. There was a man that borrowed an arga mechavrei. This person borrowed an arga, an axe, itbar, and while the borrower was using the axe, it broke. Aslika made the Rava, he came in front of Rava, Amar Lei. Rava, Paskin, Zil, Icy Sadi, Delav, Shanis Bay. Bring Edim that you did not deviate, that you didn't do anything wrong. And then what's going to be the halacha? The potar, and you'll be potar. Says the Gemara, okay, but what happens if he doesn't have Edim? Vileka Sadi Mai. Says the Gemara, Tashemad, we had a case. There was someone who borrowed an arga, an axe from his friend, Vitvar, and it broke. Aslik made the Rav on the last line. Narga Malya. You got to go pay him back. A good narga, a good axe. Amrli Rav Kana, Ravasi, the Rav. Rav Kana and Ravasi said to Rav as we turn over to Sadik Zayin and Aleph, Dina Hachi, is this the halacha? Vishasik Rav, and Rav was quiet. So they were questioning why he paskin that he has to pay back a narga Malya. And if we look at the top Rashi points out, Tina hachi shesham loikli asoi umetukan. But why? Vatanan, we learned at the beginning of Baba Kama, Gabi Nizakin, Tashlume Nazik Malamit Shabalim Metablin Benevila, Sheshamla and Avila Shalbem to Shemis, Alideza, Shezik Loiva Leo, Moisif, Umishalim Demeya. Why are you saying you have to pay back a complete good ox? The halacha is the Bailim Metablin Benevila. So over here, there's no Nevila, but there's the broken axe. Hachanami Yasumulai Shivrei Arishain. He should return him back the broken pieces. Valeim Yishalim Dimov, and then he should add on some money. And the owner has to go. So why are you saying you have to pay a narga malya? You only have to fill in the difference between the broken axe and the good axe. Says the Gemara in the top line, but what's the halacha? The halacha like Rav Kani v'Ravasi. We pass like Rav Kani v'Ravasi that what? Like we just saw in Rashi, the Mahadale Tavra, you return the broken pieces, Mamali Leas Demei, and you just fill in the Meimana, the remainder of the value of the utensil that broke. So when an item breaks, number one is you bring Eidim. If you can't bring Eidim, then what do you have to do? You have to indeed pay back. But what do you have to pay back? You have to fill in the difference between the broken item and a complete item. Continues the Gemara on the third line of Sadik Zayin Amud Aleph, Ha'ugaver the Shal Davla Mechavre. There was someone who borrowed a bucket. Itvar it broke. Amr Le Aisi Sadi Dloshanis Baby Potter. Bring Eidim that you didn't deviate and you'll be Potter. Just like we just said. Another story. Ha'ugaver the Shal Shunra Mechavre. He borrowed a cat. What do cats do? Of course, they chase away the mice. Chavar Alel Achbere Ukatalua. But guess what? The mice were chavar, the mice bound together, and they rebelled against the cat, and the mice managed to kill the cat. Yosef Ravashi Ravashi was sitting and pondering, Ki Haigavna, what is the halacha? In this case. Ki Mesa Machas Malacha Dami, is it comparable to an item dying while it's doing work, meaning you borrow the cat to do its thing? It was killed by the mice. There's nothing more you could do. Or maybe this is not a case of Mesa Machmas Malacha. For the reason being, Taisus over here speaks out, because maybe you put it in an area with too many mice. Therefore, you contributed to the death. Says the Gemara, Amar Le, Ramurcha the Ravashi, Hachi Amar Avimi min Haragrunya, Mishmei de Rava, Gavra de Nashik Etzalua. A man who a woman kills, Lo Yedina, V'lo Dayana, there's no judgment and there's no judge. Meaning, Rav is pointing out that such a death is totally unexpected. Why? It's not normal for a man to be killed by a woman. Rashi explains. So too, Rava is teaching that the borrower should have no reason why he would think all of a sudden the mice would gang up against the cat, and therefore there was no negligence, and rather it's a classical mesa machmas malacha, and the borrower is potter. Ikadi Amri, another lashain, the cat ate so many mice, bechavil umeis, became overheated from all the mice the cat consumed, and it died. Yasser Ravashi v'kamayim b'kai gavna mai, Amar leir, Amorcha Ravashi, Amar Avimi Agrunya, Gavra dinashi gatzalua lodina v'dayana. Again, the same nekuda. There's no reason why one should anticipate that regardless how many mice the cat eats or how many mice the cat has to ward off, there's no reason to anticipate that it would cause the cat any issue. And therefore, the halacha is that lamaisa is considered mesa machmas b'lacha, and one would be potter. Continues the Gemara, Amar Rava. About 20 lines down, the first one line is Amar Rava, Hai man debayil mishal midi mechavri. Says Rava, you want to borrow something from your friend, Veliftar, and you want to be potter. What should he do? Nemalei, tell your friend before you borrow the item, Ashkin Maya, can I have something to drink? And therefore, what happens? That makes it consider that the bailim is part of the she'ela, because he's doing you a taiva, he's giving you a drink, and then you'll be potter from anything that happens. But if the owner is smart, he should say, Shael Beresha. Let's first deal with the she'ela, and then I'll give you something to drink. Why? Because then it'll be akin to borrowing the owner after the she'ela, which will not create the p'tur of bailim imo. Amar Rava continues, Mikri Dardaki, a teacher of children, Shetala Tabacha, or a Shetala, a gardener, Tabacha, a butcher, V'omna, a bloodletter, V'sapar, Masa, the town barber, Kulan, Be'idan, Avidatayu, all of these people, while they are at their work, Kishe'ela, B'bailim Damu, it's like borrowing with the owner, and so he would be potter from any form of liability. What's the reason to this? One shot is that they're paid with tax money from the people, and therefore it's as if he's working with each and every person in the town, and therefore, as long as one is doing a job that services the people at large, therefore it's as if he's working for the borrower, and therefore there would be the p'tur of bailam imoi. Amru le Rabbanan, said the Rabbanan le Rav, comes on the Rabbanan, they said to Rav, Sha'ilan Mar, please, the Mar Rava, you are lent to us for our work, which is to learn Torah. Why? Because you, Rava, teach us Torah all day, and therefore the Rabbanim were telling Rava that if they were to borrow an animal from Rava and it would to die, they would be potter. Why? She'ela b'bailim. Rava is at some level lent together to everyone as he's teaching everyone, and therefore there would be a p'tur. Ikbid, Rava wasn't happy with this. Amar lahu, and Rava said to them, Lafkuye mimayna kabi'itu. You're trying to take away my money? Dr. Rava. Atot shelton li. Said Rava, mamish bumfakert. You are lent to me. Deilu anomotzi. Eshamuti lechumi mesechta lemesechta. Why? Because I could dray you from one mesechta to the next, but aton you loy masin l'shtamuti, you cannot detach me, and therefore said Rava the exact opposite. That if I were to borrow from you, I would be potter. And Rava was saying that he's gaining from learning with the people, and Rava was saying that he determines what to learn. If Rava one day decides, you know what, I want a chazer baba kama, he'll do that. So he's utilizing the people. Therefore, said Rava that if he borrows from the people, he will be pater and not vice versa. But says the Gemara of Lois is not true. Iu sha'alahu lamaisa b'yoma dekala. Rava is considered lent to the people on the yoma dekala. Why? That's the time that everyone comes to hear shir. In who? Whereas they are shalei b'shar yomi. It depends. On a regular day, you're right. The people are considered lent to Rava. But in Yom Dekala, when he's darshaning for the people, then Rava is considered lent to them. And therefore, depending on whether it's Yom Dekala or another day, will determine whether there is a P'tur Bailim Imai. Says the Gemara, Meremar bar Chanina oiger kodenaisam beichayzam. Meremar bar Chanina rented out his mule to the people of Beichayzam. Nafak ledeluye teuna behadayu. He went out to load up the packages on the animal. Pashu bam umis. The renters were negligent and the animal died. They came to Rava and Rava said, "You're Paisheya, you're Chayiv." Amrle Rabban and the Rava, 1 second. Pshia bebailami. The owner, Mereimar, helped us load it up. So at some level, there was bailami mai. If Rava was embarrassed because he thought he made a mistake. You know what they found out afterwards? Telemesar Touna who didn't hafik. That Mereimar didn't actually load it up. Mereimar was just watching them load it up. And therefore, it's not going to have the P'tur of Bailim Imai. Says the Gemara, I understand why Rava was embarrassed. Says the Gemara in the first line, says Rava, the people of Beichayzai were not negligent, but rather and it died a natural death in the house of the Gana, it was caught a natural death in the house of the Gana. And that's why Rava was echselis. That no, a Maimer wasn't actually loading up the animal, he was just observing the loading up process. So stories of whether they would have the P'tur of Bailav Imai or not. We continue with the Mishnah on the bottom of Sadik Zayin Amid Aleph. And the Mishnah is going to contrast the P'tur of Einsim that there is by a renter, whereas a Shayal, a borrower, is Chayiv for Einsim. Says the Mishnah, Ha Shayal es Aparam. So when borrows a cow, Sheila Chatziyim, or he borrowed it half a day, V'sachar Chatziyim. Sheila Yoim, he borrowed it for 1 day, V'sachar L'machar, and he rented the next day, Sachar Achas, or he rented 1 cow, V'shal Achas, he borrowed another cow, Umesa, and the cow died while he had it. Hamashil Oimer, the lender, the Bailim, they're saying, when did it die? She'ula Mesa, at the time of She'ula, at the part of day of She'ula, or the animal that was She'ula. Either one that you borrowed died, or the day that it was borrowed that it died. This is what the owner, the mashal, is saying. Or Bishah Shaisa Shula Mesa, the top of Sadik Zayin Beis. And what is the borrower saying? No, that's not at all what happened. He says, I don't know. I just don't know. Part was borrowed, part was rented, day was borrowed, day was rented, etc. Says the borrower, the renter, I don't know. The halacha is chayiv. The borrower, the renter is chayiv. Next case. But let's say the renter, the one who borrows, he says, no, he argues, he doesn't say Niyedeya. He says at the time of Schirus it was Mesa, not at the time of She'ela. So in this case, the renter, the borrower, is claiming stark that he is potter. It happened at the time of schirus, which there is a patur of aynes. And the Bailam are saying any idea, then the halacha is potter. Finally, case number 3, Zelmer Shulav Zelmer Schuro. If we have a direct head-on machlokes between the mashal and the shayel, the masker and the soicher, Yishavar HaSeicher Schuro Meisi has to swear. Zermer Nedev Zerni Yodea, then Yachlokus. In numerous cases when we have an animal that either the animal is part borrowed, part rented, or the same owner rents out some and lends out some, etc. The 3 permutations, whether the mashil knows bivadai, the shayel knows bivadai, they're clashing, or no one knows anything at all. Says the Gemara, Shmas Mina, let's learn from the first case of the Mishnah, Manali Biyadch, a classical case of Manali Biyadcha, that someone says, Yomi $100, I don't know. Chayiv, what's the halacha? That is chayiv. So Lema Tavi Tiyovta to Rav Nachman. Should we say that this is a kasha on Rav Nachman that what? De'itmar. Excuse me, the page just disappeared. Here we go. Rav Nachman, De'itmar, Manali Biyadcha, V'aloim Re'ini Yodea. Rav Huna, Rav Yudamar, Chayiv, Rav Nachman, Rav Yechanan Amri, Potter. So ask the Gemara from our Mishnah in the case of Manali Biyadcha, the guy says in Yodea, you should be Chayiv. Says the Gemara, that's a direct kasha on Rav Nachman and Rav Yechanan. Answers the Gemara 2 lines to the bottom. Kida Amar Rav Nachman. We can explain the Mishnah like Rav Nachman said elsewhere. Kigoin sheyesh esek shvua beineihem. We're talking about a case where there's already a type of shvua between these 2 people. There was a shvua amongst them, and that's the reason why if he doesn't make the shvua, he's going to have to pay. If you look at the last Rashi says, shvua b'neihem, sheneschayev lo shvua b'tanasai, v'oin yachli shava. He's mechuyev to swear, but he can't. Daini yodea kamar. And because you have a chiyav shvua that you can act upon, that's why you have to pay. Says the Gemara, what's the case of Esek Shvua? Kede Rava. As we turn over to tomorrow's daf, Sadek Chesam and Aleph, like Rava taught, Amar Rava, Manali Biyadcha L'Omer, Ein Lecha Biyadi Ela Chamishim. He's a Moida B'Mixas. He admits that he owes half. Ashar Any idea that if I don't know, B'Toyer Sheni Yachali Shava Mishalem. Because he can't swear, because he said any idea. That's the reason why the halacha is he has to pay. So to in our case, says the Gemara, Tzaddik Rav Nachman, Rav Yechanan, that the reason why you would have to pay is because he said any idea, and there is a chiyuv shvua there. Therefore, he would have to pay. Mishkachas law. Now the Gemara just finishes up over here. I know we're on the next daf, but the Gemara is in the middle of a sentence. And the Gemara now finishes up how the Mishnah fits with this case of Rava, that there is Esek Shvua Beineihem. Mishkachas law, says the Gemara in the 4th line, Reisha bebeis v'seifa begimel. The Reisha, the first 2 claims have 2 cows. The Seifa, the final claim, is 3 cows. Reisha bebeis, that what? Tamar lebeis paras masarti lecha. The owner says, I gave you 2 cows. Palga di'ayma b'sheila, palga di'ayma b'schiros. Both of them were 50-50. Inam yor, chad yom b'sheila, chad yom b'schilos. Umeisa dervayu, and they both died b'idon d'sheila. And the owner claims that they both died during the time that it was a sheila was alone. And therefore he says to the seicher, he says to the shayel, that you have to pay for both of them. Va'amar lei shayel, listen, chado, one animal in its shub in the sheila mesa. He's masking, just like the case of Rava. Moida b'mixas, he's masking, he has to pay for one. But ve'edach, he says, lo yadana. I don't know anything about ib'in and sheila mesa. And because now you would have a chiyuv shvua because of the moida b'mixas. But he can swear because he says in idea. That's the reason why in this case of in idea you're going to have to pay. V'i be'idin schir v'lo yadani bin shila meis even schir's mesa to be toish and yachli shava mishalem. That's going to be the case in the racial. Stop over here. We'll pick it up from here, in which we'll continue discussing how the Mishnah will fit with Rava. It's not a kasha on Rav Nachman, Rav Yochanan, that the reason why in this case any idea is going to be chayiv because there is a chayiv shvua. He cannot act upon because it's any idea. Therefore, he's going to have to pay.